Hello, my name is Charles Blevins. I am a spiritualist, which means I am psychic, and I also teach spirituality and help people who have uh, uh, spiritual issues. I try to help them, and I try to share knowledge as I'm gaining the knowledge and understanding from education and through the other side, which is from souls who have passed away and people who work, or souls that work for God. So I'll I'll explain to you what has helped me become more spiritual, and it can be done through heavy meditation over long periods of time. But meditation normally takes long periods before something magical will happen. What I guess I'll explain my experience, and maybe I'll have to go back to the beginning of where things really began. Um, so I was in the Marine Corps when I was younger, and they at the time they were transitioning over, and so I was probably one of the last few groups that went through a slightly harsher type of training. um, the things that they would do were more about playing mental games with you, and what they were trying to do was strip you down mentally and rebuild you back up the way that they wanted to. But there's something interesting about the process of how they break you down mentally. Here's a good example. I remember the last few weeks of boot camp, going out into the cold, and it's about 50 degrees. Doesn't sound very cold, but when you add water to 50 degrees, it's cold. And being out there all day long in that rain, and you're drenched, and you're sitting in mud puddles, and it's just long periods. Your bones are shaking, you're internally freezing. So if you stay in your mind, then it just becomes miserable and unbearable. So you have to kind of separate yourself outside of the mind and put your attention somewhere else in a much more better place. If you can't do it, it's just misery. And this is where the Marine Corps would teach us that we're 90% mental and 10% physical. And they pushed us to our limits. They wanted us to see what our full potential was. And I'm very grateful for that at the end of the day. If you haven't stood at attention for a few hours on a very hot day, or with sand fleas biting at you while you're standing there and you can't move, scratch, or get rid of it, and these things require you to remove yourself from the situation mentally. So if you can't break through the mental agony of being in these situations and stepping aside mentally, and then it's just miserable and it's harsh. And this is probably the first steps of learning about spirituality, is how to separate from the mind or the current situation that you're in. Because of if you can't separate, and then it's very hard to turn around and see what the infinite possibilities are. And this is where it requires us to remove our belief systems. And So I try to explain this to people that there is another aspect beyond just the mental mind, and most people do not understand that other aspect and what it takes to achieve that aspect. Now, after the Marine Corps, I would start having, or during the Marine Corps, I would start having visions starting to happen little by little. And that's how I met my wife. And it showed me a few other things along those aspects. And this is where I'm going to talk about these things to help someone who is trying to understand or has spiritual experiences and wants to understand how to create them or how to tap into them more often. So about, I guess, 15 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, I purchased out my family home, and I started having a breakdown, emotional breakdown, mental, and I started seeing things heavy again, and so I'd be told, like, dig here, glass. So I start digging, and there would be glass there, and this went on for several years. Dig here, and as I started to get near something that was valuable spiritually, I would hear, "Be careful." And so I'd slow down on the digging and be very cautious, and I come across crystals. And so I have lots of crystals now from the backyard. I did a lot of cleaning of the backyard. I also found that the digging reconnected me back to the earth, Mother Earth. Because by me digging, I had to quiet the mind. I was quieting my mind. I was getting rid of a lot of my anger. Excuse me. And that digging was giving me a way to resolve anger issues that I guess I had pent up inside of me for many years and didn't realize that I had these anger issues lingering inside of me. And that took probably a process of a good 3-4 years. But what I found was I was being trained how to listen spiritually, how to quiet myself, how to remove the anger physically. So this is something externally that I'm doing. And the next thing I knew is I was able to sit down and start meditating. Meditation took me another 3 years on top of this. And that was very interesting. I tried many different forms of meditation. There are thousands of forms of meditation. And what I tell people is basic meditation is really, if you're trying to get to a spiritual place, is really what you need to use. Meditation is about where your intent is implied. So if your intent is on a physical object, so you're focusing on an object. If you're focusing on something internal, you're focusing on it. So it teaches you how to use your intent, how to control your breath, how your body works. So the longer you sit there, this will continue on. What I found that works best is when I first start meditating, and I still do the same thing today, is I don't set time limits when I meditate. When I go to sit down to meditate, I'm going to meditate. So whether I'm there for 5 minutes or I'm there for 5 hours, I'm going to meditate. That's it. I try to set times that I'm going to go meditate, but I don't set a time limit. Many people make this mistake. They think that they have to sit there for 15 minutes. And I tell people who are beginning to meditate, the most valuable thing is get into the routine of setting up a time that you're going to meditate during the day, or if you're going to meditate 2 or 3 times during the day, and keep consistent with that. Over time, your meditation will extend out as it grows or progresses. People sit there and tell me, oh, meditation doesn't work. And they go, I tried to sit there for 15 minutes. I couldn't do it. And I tell people that was the mistake. You were trying to. I go, meditation isn't about trying. It's about just sitting in a quiet place or standing in a quiet place and just relaxing the mind. And it takes time to relax the mind. It doesn't happen overnight. It took me 3 years to quiet my mind. And what I mean by quieting the mind is what happened roughly after 3 years is one day I sat down to meditate and I noticed I was no longer the body. And here I am. I feel like I'm outside of my body looking down at myself or from the back of me. And I see me sitting there watching my breath, and I'm going, this is neat. And that was the first time that I literally separated, and I could see me with the mind. I could see me sitting, and I realized that I was no longer the mind. The mind was not me. We're always taught that the mind is about us, and it's not. It's a mechanical process. It crunches numbers, moves chemicals around in the body, but it's not us. No more than any other part of the body is us. So I try to explain to people that we're a soul that is driving a body like a person sitting in a car. And the better you know how your body works, the easier it is to maneuver the car or the body. So I try to explain to people, you really need to know what your body's limits are, because from there you know how far you can go to produce the end results of what you're attempting to do. You also will find that you will have easier times performing tasks because you will not limit yourself. So most people who have not been through extreme situations of pushing the body to its max limits, most people will stop at about 50% of their potential of what they can physically do, what they can mentally do, what they can emotionally handle. And it's kind of like a safety mechanism, but once you push beyond those points, and then you start to realize that, wow, I can do a lot more. And I feel sorry for a lot of young people because they've never had that experience of being pushed so far beyond their limits, and constantly being pushed beyond those limits mentally and physically, that they don't recognize what their full capabilities are as a human being and what the soul can do with a human body. And so I try to tell people that at the end of the day, we have to learn how to quiet the mind and to give it time to quiet the mind. Because once you quiet the mind, you'll discover many things will happen. One, you'll see the world completely different. Two, you'll build a different relationship with everything that's around you. You'll find love that you've never seen before. And you'll recognize your own internal love within you. It's not an easy task, and I tell people it's the hardest thing you could ever do. My mind was already halfway broken because it was already pushed beyond its mental limits. So it was easier for me to a degree than maybe for most people. But I tell people it's your right to understand who you are. It's your right to know your own soul and to see the world through a different set of eyes. It's your soul. Either get to know your soul or don't. Those are your decisions. But if you are having spiritual experiences, you have to learn how to quiet the mind, to calm those experiences down. I hope this information is helpful. I wish you the very best. I send my love, and I hope that you find the love that's within you. Please take care and have a wonderful day.